What if I told you that the greatest power in the universe isn't locked away in some distant realm, but is actually sleeping right inside your own mind at this very moment? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Right now, as you're watching this, there's an ancient force operating within you that most people have completely forgotten exists. This isn't some mystical concept or New Age fantasy. This is the most practical, scientifically backed truth about human consciousness that has been hidden in plain sight for centuries. The subconscious mind, that vast inner landscape that controls everything from your heartbeat to your deepest beliefs, has been patiently waiting for you to remember how to speak its language. Has this ever happened to you? You've tried everything to change your circumstances. You've read the books, attended the seminars, made the vision boards, yet somehow you keep finding yourself stuck in the same patterns, facing the same challenges, living the same limitations. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the problem was never your effort or your desire. The problem was that you've been looking for solutions in all the wrong places. For generations, humanity has been taught to seek answers outside ourselves. We've built elaborate systems, consulted endless authorities, and constructed what Joseph Murphy calls stone temples, when we already possess the most sophisticated temple ever created, the one residing within our own consciousness. This inner temple doesn't require expensive memberships, special credentials, or perfect conditions. It only requires one thing: your willingness to remember the creative authority you were born with. The truth is, every single day, you're already using this power. Every word you speak with conviction, every image you hold in your mind with emotion, every belief you accept as truth, these aren't just random thoughts floating through your awareness. They're active instructions being delivered directly to the most obedient servant you'll ever encounter, your subconscious mind. And here's what's fascinating. This servant never questions your orders, never takes a day off, and never fails to deliver exactly what you've programmed it to create. But here's where it gets really interesting. Stay with me until the end, because what we're about to explore will fundamentally shift how you understand your relationship with reality itself. Most people are unconsciously programming their subconscious with the wrong instructions. They're planting seeds of limitation, watering them with doubt, and then wondering why their harvest looks nothing like their dreams. The ancient wisdom that Joseph Murphy rediscovered and shared isn't about learning something completely foreign. It's about awakening to something you've always known but somehow forgot. It's about reclaiming your position as the conscious director of your own mental movie, rather than remaining a confused spectator watching your life unfold beyond your control. If you're finding value in these insights and want to continue this journey of conscious transformation, I'd really appreciate you subscribing to the channel. We're building a community of people who are serious about understanding how their minds actually work, and your presence here makes that community stronger. What you're about to learn in the next few minutes will give you the exact blueprint for communicating with this inner intelligence in a language it cannot ignore. The language it understands isn't complex formulas or academic theories. It responds to something far more intimate and immediate, the image you carry of yourself in the deepest chambers of your consciousness. This is where the real transformation begins, and it's completely different from anything you've been taught before. You see, there's a fundamental difference between learning something intellectually and awakening to something you already possess. Most educational systems treat you like an empty vessel waiting to be filled with information. But this journey we're embarking on together operates on an entirely different principle. You're not here as a student cramming for an exam. You're here as an heir gradually awakening to an inheritance that was always yours. This distinction changes everything about how we approach personal transformation. When you study as an academic, you collect facts, analyze concepts, and store information in your conscious mind. But when you awaken as an heir, something far more profound occurs. The knowledge doesn't just sit in your memory banks, it engraves itself directly into your subconscious, where your actual destiny is being written moment by moment. Now, I want to go even deeper into this hidden truth that most people never discover. Right. Now, operating silently in the background of your awareness, your subconscious mind is storing a very specific image of who you are. This isn't just a casual self-perception or a fleeting thought about your abilities. This image is the master blueprint from which every aspect of your reality is being constructed. Your health responds to this image. Your financial situation mirrors this image. Your relationships reflect this image. Even your physical environment seems to arrange itself according to this internal picture you carry of yourself. What's absolutely fascinating is that most people have no idea this process is happening. They look at their circumstances and assume they're victims of external forces, bad luck, genetics, economic conditions, other people's decisions. But the real revelation comes when you understand that your external world is actually the faithful reflection of this internal self-image that's been quietly operating behind the scenes of your consciousness. Here's where it gets really exciting. This image isn't carved in stone. It's not a permanent sentence or a fixed destiny that you're stuck with forever. Your self-image is actually more like software than hardware. It can be updated, rewritten, and completely transformed. The question isn't whether change is possible, but whether you're ready to take conscious control of the programming process. Think about this for a moment. If your current reality is the result of an unconscious program running in your subconscious mind, then consciously changing that program becomes the most direct path to changing your life. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is perfect. This is about understanding the actual mechanism through which your inner world creates your outer experience. The impact of this revelation cannot be overstated. When you truly grasp that your subconscious mind is constantly working to bring your self-image into physical manifestation, you begin to see every challenge, every limitation, every recurring pattern in your life as valuable feedback about what's actually programmed in your inner operating system. This is why so many people struggle despite their best conscious efforts. They're trying to change their results while leaving their self-image untouched. It's like trying to change what appears on your computer screen while ignoring the software that's generating the display. The screen will keep showing you the same patterns until you update the underlying program. The journey we're taking together isn't about learning to want different things or developing stronger willpower. It's about awakening to your role as the conscious programmer of your own subconscious mind. When you understand this, everything changes. Your thoughts become intentional rather than random. Your words become tools of creation rather than mere sounds. Your mental images become blueprints for your future rather than idle daydreams. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to reprogram," if this resonates with you. The moment you decide to step into this role as the conscious programmer of your reality, you'll discover something that might initially feel uncomfortable but is absolutely essential to understand. There's a pattern that runs deep in human psychology, and it's the single biggest obstacle standing between most people and their breakthrough moments. Even when individuals learn about the power of their mind, even when they intellectually understand these principles, they continue operating from what I call the victim cycle. If this conversation is opening new possibilities in your thinking, a quick like on this video helps more people discover these principles when they're ready to receive them. This cycle is insidious because it masquerades as wisdom. People will nod their heads in agreement when they hear about mental power. They'll share inspirational quotes about mindset transformation. They'll even attend seminars and read books about conscious creation. But then they return to their daily lives and continue speaking the same limiting language, entertaining the same defeating thoughts, and making decisions from the same disempowered mindset they've always operated from. Here's what's happening behind the scenes of this paradox. Most people approach personal transformation as an emotional project rather than a mental discipline. They think they need to feel different before they can think different, or they need to get motivated before they can change their internal dialogue. This approach keeps them trapped because emotions are effects, not causes. Your feelings are the result of your mental programming, not the source of it. The real revolution happens when you understand that breaking free from victimhood isn't about emotional breakthroughs or complex therapeutic processes. It's about something far simpler and far more powerful: directed mental discipline. This means consciously choosing your thoughts the same way you would choose your clothes each morning. It means speaking to yourself with the same intentionality that a surgeon uses when making an incision. What makes this approach so effective is that you're working directly with the most reliable partner you'll ever have in this journey of transformation. Your subconscious mind possesses qualities that most people never fully appreciate. It's simple in its operation, but not weak in its impact. It's obedient to your instructions, but not passive in its execution. Think of it as the most dedicated employee you could ever imagine. One who never calls in sick, never takes a vacation, never questions your orders, and never stops working on the projects you've assigned. This realization should completely shift how you approach change in your life. Right now, while you're listening to these words, your subconscious is actively working on whatever ideas you've planted in it recently. If you've been feeding it thoughts of limitation, it's busy finding ways to manifest those limitations. If you've been rehearsing scenarios of failure or disappointment, it's faithfully working to bring those scenarios into your experience. But here's the beautiful part. The moment you plant different ideas, it switches its entire operation to serve those new instructions with the same unwavering dedication. Your subconscious doesn't have preferences about what it creates. It doesn't judge your goals as too big or too small. It doesn't analyze whether you deserve what you're asking for or whether it's realistic given your current circumstances. It simply takes whatever you consistently feed it and begins the process of making it real. This is why the victim cycle is so unnecessary and so tragic. People remain stuck not because change is difficult, but because they keep giving their subconscious the same instructions while expecting different results. They continue programming it with phrases like "nothing ever works out for me," or "I always struggle with money," or "relationships are hard for me," and then wonder why these patterns persist despite their conscious desire for something better. The breakthrough comes when you realize that every single thought you think, every word you speak, and every image you hold in your mind is either programming your subconscious for success or programming it for struggle. There's no neutral ground. You're always programming something. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Now, I want to reveal something that will completely change how you see this process of mental programming, because there's a specific mechanism at work that most people never discover. Write in the comments, "I choose conscious programming," if you're ready to take control of this process. This mechanism operates on a principle so fundamental that you've been unconsciously using it your entire life, yet most people never recognize its profound power. Think about how you learned to walk as a child. You didn't master it through a single dramatic moment of understanding or a burst of emotional inspiration. You learned through something far more reliable and methodical: repetition and persistence. Each stumbling step, each wobbly attempt, each small correction was programming your nervous system until walking became as natural as breathing. Your subconscious mind learns in exactly the same way, just as your body required consistent practice to develop physical coordination. Your inner mind requires consistent mental practice to develop new patterns of thought and manifestation. This isn't about repeating empty affirmations or mechanical mantras. This is about understanding that every word you speak with intention, every image you hold with purpose, every thought you consciously direct is functioning as a precise instruction to the most sophisticated programming system in existence. When Joseph Murphy talks about prayer, he's not referring to the desperate pleading that most people associate with spiritual practice. He's describing something far more practical and immediate: the art of giving clear, specific orders to your subconscious mind. Each time you consciously choose your words, you're essentially programming your inner operating system. Each example of success you study and internalize becomes evidence that your subconscious can reference when creating similar results in your own life. Consider subscribing if this content is helping you see your life from a new perspective. Every video I create is designed to give you practical tools for mental programming that actually work, not just feel-good concepts that don't change anything real. This transforms everything about how you approach personal development. You're not trying to convince yourself of something that might be true. You're not attempting to generate feelings you don't naturally have. You're simply engaging in direct reprogramming through the consistent application of mental discipline. It's as practical and reliable as learning any other skill, except the skill you're developing is conscious creation itself. Now, I want to reveal something that will completely shift your perspective on this entire process. What we're really talking about here isn't religion or spirituality in the traditional sense. You're not being asked to adopt new beliefs or worship particular doctrines. Instead, you're stepping into what can only be described as an invisible temple, a sacred space that exists within the landscape of your own consciousness. In this temple, your mind serves as the altar, and your words become the offering. But here's what makes this so different from conventional spiritual practice. This temple doesn't require faith in the traditional sense. It demands something far more practical and immediate: application. The universal laws that govern how your subconscious mind operates don't care whether you believe in them or not. They function with the same consistency as gravity or electricity, regardless of your personal opinions about their validity. This revelation liberates you from the burden of having to believe before you can experience results. You don't need to convince yourself that these principles work. You simply need to apply them with the same methodical persistence you would use to master any skill. The evidence will speak for itself through the changes that begin manifesting in your life. The beauty of working with universal laws is their complete impartiality. They don't play favorites. They don't require you to be spiritually advanced or emotionally perfect. They simply respond to consistent application with predictable results. When you understand this, the entire journey becomes less mystical and more scientific. You're not hoping for divine intervention. You're engaging with reliable principles that respond to your conscious participation. This is why so many people who discover these principles experience rapid transformations that seem almost miraculous to outside observers. They're not the recipients of special favor or unusual luck. They've simply learned to work with laws that were always operating in their lives, but now they're doing it consciously and intentionally, instead of accidentally and unconsciously. The impact of this shift cannot be overstated. When you stop trying to change your life through willpower alone and start collaborating with the natural programming mechanisms of your subconscious mind, you discover that transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. You're no longer fighting against your own psychology, you're partnering with it. But there's something even more profound happening behind the scenes of this process, something that reveals why certain people seem to manifest their desires effortlessly, while others struggle for years without seeing significant results. Write in the comments, "I'm entering the temple," if you're ready to approach this work with the respect and consistency it deserves. The difference between those who effortlessly manifest their desires and those who struggle lies in a single profound realization that transforms their entire relationship with language itself. when you truly grasp that every phrase you repeat, every emotion you maintain, and every image you visualize is functioning as a living seed planted directly into your subconscious mind, something remarkable happens. You can no longer speak casually or think carelessly. This isn't about becoming obsessive or paranoid about your thoughts. It's about awakening to the reality that your words carry creative power far beyond what most people ever imagine. Think about this for a moment. Every single phrase that comes out of your mouth or moves through your mind isn't just sound waves or fleeting mental activity. Each word is a living instruction being delivered to the most receptive and obedient creative force in your personal universe. Most people go through their entire lives unconsciously programming their subconscious with random, contradictory, and often destructive instructions. They'll say things like, "I'm so stupid," when they make a mistake, or "I never have enough money when paying bills," or "I'm getting old," when they look in the mirror. They think these are just innocent expressions of temporary frustration, but their subconscious mind receives each a phrase as a serious directive to be implemented in their reality. This revelation completely transforms how you approach communication, both with others and with yourself. When you understand that your subconscious is always listening, always recording, always preparing to manifest whatever you consistently feed it, you naturally become more intentional with your language. You stop engaging in casual complaints, random negative commentary, or habitual expressions of limitation because you realize you're literally programming your future experience with every word. Go ahead and hit the like button if you're feeling that connection we've built through these ideas. It's a simple way to show that this message resonated with something real inside you. But here's where this gets even more fascinating. The impact of this understanding extends far beyond just watching your words. It reveals the hidden mechanism behind everything you're currently experiencing in your life. Right now, every condition, circumstance, relationship, and challenge you're facing has its origin, not in external forces or random events, but in the invisible seeds that have been planted and cultivated in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. This is the hidden truth that changes everything about how you interpret your life circumstances. Your current financial situation is the harvest of financial thoughts and beliefs you've been unconsciously planting for years. Your health condition reflects the mental images and emotional patterns you've been feeding your body through your subconscious programming. Your relationships mirror the deep beliefs you hold about love, trust, and your own worthiness of connection. Understanding this principle is both liberating and sobering. It's liberating because it means you're not at the mercy of external circumstances, genetic predispositions, or cosmic bad luck. Every aspect of your reality is connected to mental seeds you can identify, examine, and consciously replace. But it's also sobering because it means taking full responsibility for your role as the gardener of your own consciousness. Your subconscious mind functions as the most fertile soil imaginable. Every mental image you repeatedly hold, every belief you consistently entertain, every sustained emotion you allow to flow through your awareness becomes a seed in this soil. And just like any garden, what grows there depends entirely on what you plant and how you tend to it. The journey we're taking together is really about becoming a conscious gardener rather than an unconscious one. Most people are shocked when they begin examining the mental seeds they've been planting without awareness. They discover they've been cultivating worry instead of confidence, scarcity instead of abundance, criticism instead of appreciation. No wonder their external harvest looks nothing like their conscious desires. But here's the beautiful part. The moment you become aware of this process, you can begin consciously choosing what to plant. Your subconscious soil is incredibly responsive and doesn't hold grudges about past plantings. It's always ready to grow whatever new seeds you consciously introduce, regardless of what was there before. Now, I want to explore the most practical aspect of this entire revelation because there's a specific way that your subconscious mind processes these mental seeds that determines whether they'll grow into the experiences you desire or continue producing results you want to change. Write in the comments, "I'm planting new seeds," if you're ready to become a conscious gardener of your own mind. The way your subconscious mind processes these mental seeds reveals something both profound and unsettling about human psychology. Your inner mind operates with complete impartiality. It doesn't evaluate the moral worth of your thoughts. It doesn't judge whether your mental images will benefit you or harm you, and it certainly doesn't filter out ideas that might create problems in your life. Just like fertile earth that will grow whatever seeds are planted in it, whether they're wheat or weeds, poison or nourishment, your subconscious simply accepts whatever material you consistently feed it through persistent thoughts accompanied by strong emotion. This impartial nature of your subconscious is both its greatest gift and its most dangerous quality. It means you have access to unlimited creative power, but it also means that this power will faithfully serve whatever instructions you give it, regardless of whether those instructions align with your conscious desires. Your subconscious mind doesn't care if you're programming it for success or failure, health or sickness, abundance or poverty. It simply responds to the emotional intensity and repetitive nature of whatever thoughts you're planting. This is why so many people find themselves trapped in patterns they consciously want to change, but somehow can't seem to escape. They're not victims of external circumstances or genetic predispositions. They're unconscious farmers who have been unknowingly cultivating the very conditions they're trying to avoid. The tragedy is that they've been working just as hard to create their problems as successful people work to create their breakthroughs. But they've been doing it accidentally, without awareness of the cause and effect relationship between their mental habits and their life results. Think about the phrases you hear people say regularly, phrases that have become so automatic they don't even notice they're saying them. "This always happens to me" is one of the most common unconscious programming statements. Every time someone repeats this phrase with the emotional charge of frustration or resignation, they're literally instructing their subconscious to ensure that this continues happening to them. They think they're just commenting on their bad luck, but they're actually reinforcing the very pattern they want to break. "I never have luck" is another devastating piece of unconscious programming that millions of people repeat daily. The person saying this believes they're simply stating a fact about their circumstances, but their subconscious receives it as a direct order to block opportunities, prevent fortunate coincidences, and maintain conditions of struggle. They become unconscious architects of their own limitation, building their prison one repetitive thought at a time. If you're ready to go deeper into these principles and discover more techniques for conscious creation, subscribing to this channel ensures you won't miss the practical guidance that can transform how you approach every area of your life. What makes this even more tragic is that these individuals often work incredibly hard to improve their lives through external actions. They'll change jobs, move to different cities, try new strategies, read self-help books, and attend seminars, all while continuing to program their subconscious with the same limiting beliefs that created their original problems. They're trying to change their harvest while continuing to plant the same destructive seeds. The hidden truth behind most persistent life challenges is this pattern of unconscious mental farming. People are suffering not because life is inherently difficult or because they're unlucky or cursed, but because they've been unknowingly programming their subconscious mind to recreate the same limiting conditions over and over again. Their conscious mind wants one thing, but their unconscious programming is working tirelessly to create something completely different. This revelation should be both sobering and incredibly hopeful. It's sobering because it means taking full responsibility for your role in creating your current circumstances, even the ones you definitely don't want. But it's hopeful because it means that the same mental mechanism that's been working against you can be redirected to work for you instead. The journey from unconscious farmer to conscious creator isn't about learning complex techniques or developing supernatural abilities. It's about becoming aware of what you're already planting in your mental garden and making deliberate choices about what you want to cultivate instead. Your subconscious is already perfectly programmed and functioning flawlessly. The only question is whether you're going to direct its power consciously or continue letting it operate on autopilot. But there's something even more specific happening in this process that most people never discover. Something that determines whether your new mental seeds will actually take root and grow. Write in the comments, "I see my patterns," if you're beginning to recognize the unconscious programming you've been running. What determines whether your new mental seeds actually take root isn't just the words you choose or the images you visualize. It's the consistency and emotional authenticity with which you plant them. This is where theory transforms into tangible results and where the real-world impact of these principles becomes undeniable. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this transformation in action. There was a woman who had been struggling with chronic fatigue for years. She had tried various treatments, consulted multiple doctors, and explored different therapeutic approaches, but nothing seemed to provide lasting relief. Her energy levels remained consistently low, affecting every aspect of her life, from her career to her relationships. What changed everything wasn't a new medication or medical procedure. It was a simple decision to consciously reprogram her subconscious mind. Every night for 30 days, she repeated a specific affirmation with genuine intention: "I am pure energy. My body responds to life." This wasn't mechanical repetition or wishful thinking. She was deliberately changing the quality of thoughts entering what Joseph Murphy calls her inner field. She understood that her chronic fatigue was, in part, the manifestation of years of unconscious programming about her body's limitations and energy capacity. The transformation was remarkable. Within those 30 days, her chronic fatigue began to disappear without any additional medical intervention. Her energy levels returned, her vitality increased, and her entire outlook on life shifted. What had happened wasn't a miracle in the supernatural sense. It was the natural result of consciously directing her subconscious mind to create a different physical reality based on new mental programming. This same principle operates across every area of human experience, including financial circumstances. Another powerful example involves a man who had been living in genuine scarcity for years. Despite working hard and trying various strategies to improve his financial situation, he found himself trapped in a cycle of barely meeting his basic needs. Like many people in similar situations, he had been unconsciously programming his subconscious with thoughts of limitation and lack. His breakthrough came when he decided to plant different seeds in his mental garden. He began repeating with sincere conviction, "I'm a channel of infinite provision. Everything comes to me easily." But here's what made his approach so effective. He coupled this affirmation with daily gratitude for what he already had, no matter how modest it seemed. He wasn't trying to convince himself of something he didn't believe. He was systematically reprogramming his subconscious to recognize and attract abundance. If these insights are making sense, and you can feel how they apply to your own life, that like button is right there, and it genuinely helps spread this understanding to others who are searching for these answers. The results appeared faster than he had expected. Within 6 weeks of consistent mental programming, an unexpected opportunity presented itself that completely resolved his immediate financial needs. This wasn't coincidence or luck. It was the predictable result of aligning his subconscious programming with abundance rather than scarcity. These stories reveal something crucial about how transformation actually occurs in the real world. Most people approach change as if it requires dramatic external action or major life overhauls. But the most profound shifts often happen through subtle, consistent adjustments to your internal programming. When you change what you're mentally cultivating, your external circumstances begin shifting to match your new inner landscape. The key insight here is that your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you're visualizing and what you're actually experiencing. When you consistently feed it images of health, vitality, abundance, and success accompanied by genuine emotion, it begins organizing your thoughts, decisions, and actions to create conditions that match those mental images. This is why these principles work regardless of your starting point or current circumstances. Your subconscious isn't limited by your past experiences, your current bank account, or your medical history. It responds to what you're programming it with right now, in this moment, through your conscious choices about what thoughts to entertain and what mental images to cultivate. But there's something even more profound happening behind the scenes of these transformations. Something that reveals why certain people experience almost immediate results, while others seem to struggle for months without seeing significant changes. Write in the comments, programming works. If these real-world examples are helping you understand the practical power of conscious mental programming. The difference between those who experience rapid transformation and those who struggle for months lies in understanding a fundamental truth about how your subconscious mind actually operates. Most people think of their subconscious as a passive storage unit, like a filing cabinet where thoughts occasionally get deposited. But this couldn't be further from reality. Your subconscious functions as dynamic, living soil, always active, constantly working, perpetually collecting every word you pronounce with conviction, and every image you maintain with genuine emotion. This revelation changes everything about how you approach mental programming. Your subconscious isn't waiting for you to sit down for formal meditation sessions or structured affirmation practices. It's operating right now, in this very moment, processing every internal conversation you're having with yourself. The casual thoughts you entertain while driving to work, the mental commentary you engage in while watching the news, the silent conversations you have with yourself while lying in bed. This ongoing internal dialogue represents your real agricultural labor. Think about this for a moment. Most people are incredibly careless with their internal conversation, treating it as meaningless background noise, rather than recognizing it as the primary mechanism through which they're programming their future experiences. They'll spend hours researching the best foods for their physical health, while completely ignoring the mental nutrition they're feeding their subconscious mind every single day. The people who experience rapid results understand that transformation isn't a part-time project. They recognize that every moment of internal dialogue is either planting constructive seeds or destructive ones. They become conscious gardeners of their own minds, paying attention to the quality of thoughts they're cultivating, not just during dedicated practice time, but throughout their entire waking experience. This brings us to one of the most profound spiritual insights ever recorded, one that perfectly describes the mechanism we've been exploring. When Jesus spoke about the kingdom of heaven being like a man who sowed good seed in his field, he wasn't offering a religious metaphor. He was providing a precise description of how your inner mind operates. The field he referenced is your subconscious mind, and the good seed represents the constructive thoughts, positive images, and life-affirming beliefs that you can consciously choose to plant there. This parable reveals the hidden truth behind all spiritual teaching and personal transformation. The kingdom of heaven isn't a distant destination you reach after death. It's a state of consciousness you can access right now by learning to sow the right seeds in the fertile field of your subconscious mind. When you plant thoughts of health, abundance, love, and peace with consistency and emotion, Your external reality begins reflecting those internal conditions. But here's where this gets really profound. The parable also mentions that while the man slept, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat. This perfectly describes what happens when you're not consciously tending your mental garden. Your subconscious mind never stops working, never takes a break from its agricultural labor. If you're not deliberately planting constructive thoughts, negative programming from your environment, your past experiences, and your unconscious fears will plant themselves. This is why some people seem to effortlessly maintain positive life conditions, while others constantly struggle against recurring problems. The successful ones have learned to be vigilant gardeners of their consciousness. They understand that mental farming isn't a hobby or occasional practice. It's a full-time responsibility that determines the quality of their entire life experience. The journey we're taking together is really about awakening to this responsibility and embracing it as the most important work you'll ever do. Every decision you make about what to think, what to say, and what to visualize is literally determining the landscape of your future reality. Your internal conversation isn't separate from your external circumstances. It's the invisible blueprint from which your visible life is being constructed. Now, I want to explore what happens when this dynamic soil of your subconscious encounters resistance, because there's a specific pattern that sabotages most people's transformation efforts before they even realize what's happening. Write in the comments, "I'm tending my garden," if you're ready to take full responsibility for the quality of your internal conversation. This pattern of resistance reveals itself in a way that most people never anticipate, and it's rooted in one of the most misunderstood aspects of how your subconscious mind actually operates. Unlike your conscious mind, which gets tired, takes breaks, and needs rest to function properly, your subconscious mind operates under what can only be described as the never-sleeping law. Right now, while you're listening to these words, your subconscious is working. When you're walking down the street, it's working. When you're talking to friends, it's working. When you're suffering through difficult emotions, it's working. And most importantly, when you're sleeping at night, it's still working. This continuous operation means that your subconscious never suspends its activity due to fatigue, never takes a vacation from its responsibilities, and never waits for you to gain clarity about what you want before it begins executing. It's programming. It doesn't operate through consultation or committee meetings with your conscious mind. It functions through something far more direct and immediate. Pure programming based on whatever instructions you've been feeding it most consistently. Understanding this changes everything about how you approach personal transformation. Most people think they can work on their mindset for 20 minutes in the morning and then spend the rest of the day thinking whatever random thoughts cross their mind without consequence. But your subconscious doesn't operate on a part-time schedule. Every hour you're awake, it's collecting data about what you really believe, what you truly expect, and what you're genuinely programming it to create in your life. This is where the absence of filtering becomes both the greatest opportunity and the greatest danger in working with your subconscious mind. When you deliver a clear, repeated image charged with genuine emotion to your subconscious, it receives that image as a direct order to be executed. It doesn't pause to evaluate whether this image represents something you consciously desire or something you're trying to avoid. It doesn't analyze whether the instruction will benefit you or harm you. It simply accepts the emotional data and begins the process of execution without any filtering mechanism whatsoever. This reveals why so many people struggle with transformation despite their sincere conscious intentions. They'll spend time visualizing success, health, or abundance, but then they'll spend hours throughout the day worrying about failure, imagining worst-case scenarios, or rehearsing fears about what might go wrong. Their subconscious receives both sets of instructions with equal validity, but it tends to execute the ones that carry the strongest emotional charge and the most frequent repetition. The hidden truth behind most transformation struggles is this conflict between conscious desires and unconscious Programming. People want health but spend more mental energy focused on their symptoms. They desire financial abundance but invest more emotional attention in their bills and limitations. They long for loving relationships but replay past hurts and future fears more vividly than they visualize harmonious connections. Your subconscious mind doesn't have the ability to resolve these contradictions for you. It simply works with whatever programming carries the most emotional intensity and repetitive focus. This is why willpower alone rarely creates lasting change. You're trying to override a system that operates on completely different principles than conscious decision-making. The journey toward conscious creation requires recognizing that every single thought you entertain with emotion is a vote for the kind of reality you want your subconscious to construct. You can't vote for abundance in the morning and poverty all afternoon, then wonder why your financial situation doesn't improve. You can't program health for 10 minutes and disease for 10 hours, then expect your body to respond to the minority vote. This insight transforms your entire approach to mental discipline. Instead of trying to force positive thoughts or suppress negative ones, you begin making conscious choices about which thoughts deserve your emotional investment. You start treating your attention like the precious resource it is, understanding that whatever you focus on with feeling becomes the blueprint your subconscious uses to construct your experience. But there's something even more specific about timing that most people never discover, something that determines whether your conscious programming efforts will successfully override years of unconscious conditioning. Write in the comments, "No filtering understood," if you're beginning to grasp why consistency in your mental programming is absolutely essential for creating lasting change. The timing factor that determines whether your conscious programming efforts successfully override years of unconscious conditioning centers around one of the most powerful and overlooked opportunities available to every human being, the transition into sleep. This is where the real magic of transformation happens, not because sleep itself is mystical, but because of how your subconscious mind operates during those crucial hours when your conscious mind finally steps aside. While your body enters its rest phase and your conscious mind releases its grip on analytical thinking, your subconscious mind actually increases its activity. But here's the key insight that changes everything. Your subconscious works throughout the night with whatever images, phrases, and emotions were the last things registered in your consciousness before sleep. If those final mental impressions are of peace, health, abundance, and harmony, your subconscious spends the entire night activating what can only be described as internal healing and creative machinery. Think about the profound implications of this. For approximately 8 hours every night, your subconscious has uninterrupted access to work on whatever programming you've given it, without interference from doubt, logic, or contradictory thoughts. If you've planted seeds of health and vitality before sleep, your subconscious spends those hours orchestrating cellular repair, optimizing immune function, and aligning your body's systems for greater harmony. If you've programmed abundance and opportunity, it works through the night, organizing thoughts, insights, and intuitive guidance that will lead you toward those conditions. But if your last conscious thoughts before sleep are filled with worry, fear, resentment, or limitation, your subconscious dedicates those same precious hours to reinforcing those patterns, strengthening the neural pathways associated with stress, and preparing your body and mind to continue experiencing whatever you've emotionally programmed as your reality. This reveals why the moments before sleep are perhaps the most important minutes of your entire day from a transformation perspective. What you choose to think about, visualize, and feel as you drift off to sleep becomes the foundation for 8 hours of uninterrupted subconscious programming. Most people unconsciously sabotage this opportunity by using their pre-sleep time to review problems, rehearse worries, or replay difficult conversations from the day. But there's something even more crucial to understand about how this programming process actually gets activated. Your subconscious mind doesn't respond to the intellectual content of your thoughts. It responds to the emotional charge that accompanies them. This is where most people completely misunderstand how transformation actually occurs. They think they need to convince their subconscious that their affirmations are true, but your subconscious doesn't evaluate truth claims. It responds to emotional authenticity and intensity. This means that your subconscious doesn't admit appeals, doesn't consider context, and doesn't make allowances for whether you were joking when you said something. If a phrase was pronounced with genuine emotion, whether that emotion was positive or negative, it gets accepted as real programming data. This is why guarding what you say when you're emotionally altered becomes absolutely critical for anyone serious about conscious creation. When you're angry, frustrated, scared, or overwhelmed, your emotional state actually amplifies the programming power of whatever words come out of your mouth. People will say things like, "I hate my life," or "I can't take this anymore," or "Nothing ever works out for me," in moments of intense emotion, thinking these are just expressions of temporary feelings. But your subconscious receives these emotionally charged statements as serious instructions about what kind of reality to continue creating. This understanding completely transforms how you approach emotional situations. Instead of seeing challenging emotions as problems to be avoided, you begin recognizing them as powerful opportunities to plant new programming when your subconscious is most receptive. The same emotional intensity that can reinforce limitation can be redirected to establish empowering new patterns. The journey we're taking together is really about learning to harness these moments of emotional activation consciously rather than letting them randomly program your subconscious with whatever thoughts happen to be present. When you understand that emotion is the activation key that makes any mental programming stick, you can begin using your feelings as allies in transformation rather than obstacles to overcome. Now, I want to explore what happens when you combine this understanding of emotional activation with specific techniques that literally reprogram your subconscious mind at the cellular level. Write in the comments. Emotions activate programming. If you're beginning to see how your feelings serve as the power source for whatever you're mentally creating. When you combine emotional activation with specific reprogramming techniques, you tap into what might be the most profound insight about human consciousness ever recorded. Jesus revealed this principle when he said, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." Most people interpret this as a moral teaching about character, but it's actually a precise description of how your subconscious programming system operates. The abundance he referenced isn't referring to material wealth or even emotional states. It's pointing directly to the content stored in your subconscious mind. Whatever you've been consistently depositing into your subconscious through repeated thoughts, sustained emotions, and vivid mental images eventually expresses itself through your words, your decisions, and ultimately your life circumstances. This creates what can only be described as cycles of creation or cycles of destruction, depending on the quality of content you've been storing in that deep mental reservoir. When your subconscious is filled with images of health, abundance, love, and possibility, these stored patterns naturally express themselves through optimistic language, confident decision-making, and actions that align with success. But when your inner storehouse contains fear, limitation, resentment, and doubt, these patterns just as naturally express themselves through pessimistic speech, hesitant choices, and behaviors that sabotage your conscious goals. This revelation transforms how you understand the relationship between your inner world and your outer experience. Your current circumstances aren't random events or cosmic accidents. They're the faithful external expression of whatever content has been dominating your subconscious programming. The good news is that this content can be consciously updated at any time, but there's a specific challenge that tests most people's commitment to transformation. and it occurs during the most crucial moments of their journey. The real test of your understanding comes not during peaceful moments when positive thinking feels easy, but during periods of genuine pain, crisis, or difficulty. This is where most people unconsciously reinforce the very patterns they're trying to change. When facing physical discomfort, emotional distress, or external challenges, the natural human tendency is to strengthen suffering through what can only be called defeat thoughts. People will say things like, "This is never going to end," or "Why does this always happen to me?" or "I can't handle much more of this," during their most vulnerable moments. They believe they're simply expressing their honest feelings, but they're actually programming their subconscious to extend and intensify their suffering. Each emotionally charged statement of defeat becomes an instruction for their inner mind to create more of the same experience. But here's where conscious reprogramming becomes most powerful and transformative. If amid genuine pain, you can access the discipline to affirm something like, "This too shall pass. God's light guides me through this experience," you begin reversing the destructive pattern through direction rather than denial. You're not pretending the pain doesn't exist or trying to convince yourself that everything is perfect. You're consciously choosing to program your subconscious with images and words that lead toward resolution rather than prolongation of suffering. This approach represents a fundamental shift from unconscious victim programming to conscious creator programming. Instead of allowing difficult circumstances to automatically trigger limiting beliefs and defeating self-talk, you use those same circumstances as opportunities to plant empowering seeds in the fertile soil of heightened emotion. The impact of this shift cannot be overstated. When you learn to redirect your mental programming during challenging times, you're literally interrupting cycles that have been operating in your life for years or even decades. You're taking the emotional intensity that would normally reinforce limitation and redirecting it toward creating breakthrough patterns instead. This doesn't mean the pain disappears instantly or that external circumstances immediately change. But what does shift immediately is the trajectory of your subconscious programming. Instead of using your emotional energy to strengthen the very patterns you want to escape, you begin using that same energy to establish the mental foundation for genuine transformation. The journey we're exploring together reveals that your most difficult moments aren't obstacles to transformation. They're actually your greatest opportunities for deep, lasting change because they provide the emotional intensity necessary to override old programming with new instructions. Now, I want to share the most practical application of everything we've discussed because there's a specific technique that allows you to literally speak healing and transformation directly into your physical body. Write in the comments, "I redirect my pain," if you're ready to use challenging moments as opportunities for conscious reprogramming rather than unconscious reinforcement of limitation. This technique that allows you to speak healing directly into your physical body represents one of the most immediate and practical applications of subconscious programming. Your body isn't just a mechanical structure operating independently from your mind. Every cell, every organ, every system is connected to and influenced by the continuous stream of mental instructions flowing from your subconscious. When you learn to consciously direct these instructions, you gain access to your body's incredible capacity for self-healing and regeneration. Let me share a powerful example that demonstrates just how quickly this process can work. There was a woman who had been suffering from nighttime palpitations for months. Every evening as she prepared for sleep, her heart would begin racing, creating anxiety that made rest nearly impossible. Night after night, she would lie in bed saying to herself, "I'm afraid to die sleeping," a phrase that carried intense emotional charge because it reflected her genuine fear. What she didn't realize is that this emotionally loaded statement was functioning as a direct instruction to her subconscious mind, programming her cardiovascular system to remain in a state of heightened alert and anxiety. Her heart was literally responding to the fearful programming she was unconsciously delivering through her internal dialogue. The transformation began when she learned to consciously redirect her pre-sleep programming. Instead of reinforcing fear, she began repeating with sincere intention, "My heart is strong, beats with divine life rhythm. I rest in peace." This wasn't positive thinking or wishful affirmation. It was deliberate reprogramming of the instructions her subconscious was sending to her cardiovascular system. The results were remarkable. Within just 2 weeks of consistent mental redirection, her nighttime palpitations completely disappeared. Her heart rate normalized, her sleep quality improved, and her overall anxiety around bedtime vanished. This wasn't a medical miracle. It was the natural result of giving her subconscious mind clear, positive instructions about how her body should function during rest. This example reveals something profound about the relationship between your mental images and your physical reality. Your subconscious mind operates on what can only be described as image multiplication. When you repeatedly imagine yourself succeeding, healing, thriving, or experiencing joy with genuine emotion and unwavering constancy, your subconscious doesn't just store these images as pleasant fantasies. It registers them as actual reality and immediately begins the complex process of moving resources, people, ideas, and physiological impulses toward creating conditions that match those internal images. Think about the profound implications of this. Every time you vividly visualize yourself in perfect health, your subconscious begins adjusting hormone levels, optimizing immune function, and directing cellular repair processes to align with that image. When you consistently imagine yourself succeeding in your goals, your inner mind starts organizing thoughts, insights, and opportunities that naturally lead you toward those outcomes. This is why successful people often seem to have incredible luck or uncanny timing. They're not the recipients of special, cosmic favor. They've learned to program their subconscious with clear, emotionally charged images of success, and their inner mind responds by orchestrating circumstances that match those mental blueprints. The hidden truth behind rapid transformation is that your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you're vividly imagining and what you're actually experiencing. Both register as equally real in your inner programming system. This means you can literally practice success, rehearse health, and experience abundance in your imagination with such consistency that your subconscious begins creating external conditions to match your internal reality. But there's a specific way to amplify this image multiplication process that most people never discover, a technique that transforms casual visualization into precise subconscious programming. The key lies in understanding that your subconscious responds most powerfully, not just to images, but to images that carry the specific emotional signature of gratitude and completion. Now, I want to explore the most transformative aspect of this entire process, because there's a particular state of consciousness that accelerates every principle we've discussed. Write in the comments, "My images multiply," if you're beginning to understand how your consistent mental pictures become the blueprint for your physical reality. This particular state of consciousness that accelerates every principle we've discussed operates according to what I call the river analogy. And understanding this completely transforms how you approach your transformation journey. Just as a river cannot stop flowing regardless of what obstacles it encounters, the subconscious law governing your mind cannot stop acting regardless of your conscious beliefs about it. You can deny its existence, ignore its operation, or even mock its principles, but it will continue faithfully fulfilling whatever you order through your consistent thoughts and sustained emotions. This means that right now, in this very moment, your subconscious mind is actively working on something. It's either working to create more of what you currently have, or it's working to manifest whatever new programming you've been consciously introducing. There's no neutral ground, no pause button, no vacation time from this process. Like a river that flows whether you acknowledge it or not, your subconscious programming continues operating whether you're paying attention to it or not. The profound insight here is that you're always programming something. The question isn't whether this process is happening. The question is whether you're directing it consciously or allowing it to operate randomly based on whatever thoughts and emotions happen to dominate your mental landscape. Most people live their entire lives never realizing they have conscious control over this river of creation flowing through their minds. But there's a specific practice that transforms random mental activity into precise subconscious programming, and it's so simple that most people initially underestimate its power. This practice involves dedicating just 5 minutes at awakening and 5 minutes before sleep to what can only be described as silent watering of your mental field through conscious affirmation. Though this practice seems small and silent compared to dramatic external actions, its effect on your subconscious programming is both profound and constant. Think about this for a moment. 10 minutes total each day. That's less time than most people spend checking social media or watching television advertisements. Yet those 10 minutes, when used for deliberate subconscious programming, become the most transformative minutes of your entire day. During these focused sessions, you're not competing with the random thoughts, external distractions, and unconscious mental chatter that normally interfere with clear programming. The power of this silent watering technique lies in its timing and consistency rather than its duration. Your subconscious mind is most receptive to new programming during the transition states between waking and sleeping consciousness. In the morning, as your conscious mind gradually comes online, there's a window of heightened receptivity when your subconscious is still dominant. Similarly, as you drift towards sleep, your conscious, analytical mind naturally relaxes its grip, creating another optimal opportunity for direct subconscious programming. During these 5-minute sessions, you're essentially having a private conversation with the most powerful creative force in your personal universe. You're speaking directly to the intelligence that controls your heartbeat, digests your food, heals your injuries, and orchestrates the countless biological processes that keep you alive. But more than that, you're communicating with the same intelligence that attracts opportunities, generates insights, and arranges the synchronicities that shape your external circumstances. The transformation that occurs through this practice happens not because 5 minutes contains some magical power, but because consistency in small actions creates compound effects in your subconscious programming. Each session builds upon the previous one, gradually but persistently replacing old limiting patterns with new empowering instructions. Like water consistently flowing over stone, eventually carves new channels. Your daily, conscious programming gradually but inevitably reshapes the mental landscape from which your life experiences emerge. What makes this approach so effective is that it requires no special abilities, no complex techniques, and no perfect conditions. You simply need the discipline to speak to your subconscious with intention and consistency, treating these daily sessions as sacred appointments with your own creative potential. Now, I want to reveal the most profound aspect of this entire journey, because there's something that happens when you combine consistent daily programming with a specific understanding about the true nature of your relationship to the creative power of the universe. Write in the comments, "I commit to watering," if you're ready to establish this simple but powerful daily practice of conscious subconscious programming. When you combine consistent daily programming with a deeper understanding of how words actually affect your physical being, you discover something that completely reframes everything we've been exploring together. The words you use don't simply dissolve into the air after you speak them. They dissolve directly into your blood, your skin, and your immediate environment. When you pronounce a phrase with genuine emotion, especially when that phrase is repeated consistently, you're literally writing with invisible fire on the water that composes the majority of your physical being. This isn't poetic metaphor. It's describing a real, biological and energetic process that most people never recognize. Every word you speak with conviction becomes part of your cellular structure, influencing not just your thoughts and emotions, but the actual molecular composition of your body. Your words don't just program your subconscious mind, they actively transform the substance of your physical existence. To understand how profound this really is, you need to recognize what your body actually consists of. More than 70% of your physical mass is water, but this isn't neutral, empty water like what you might find in a glass or a lake. This is informed water, water that has been programmed and structured by every thought you've thought, every word you've spoken, and every emotion you've sustained. This information becomes literally engraved into the molecular structure of the water that flows through your bloodstream, bathes your cells, and forms the foundation of your physical existence. When the ancient text records that God said, "Let there be light," and light appeared, this wasn't metaphorical poetry about divine power. It was documenting the fundamental mental law that governs all creation. The same principle that operates in that cosmic example operates in your personal reality every single day. When you speak with conviction and emotion, you're exercising the same creative force that brought the universe into existence, except you're applying it to the smaller universe of your own body and circumstances. This revelation transforms how you understand the relationship between your spiritual nature and your physical experience. You're not trapped in a material body that's separate from your consciousness. You're living as consciousness expressed through a physical form that responds to your mental and verbal instructions. Every cell in your body is continuously being influenced by the quality of thoughts and words you're feeding into your system. Think about the implications of this. When you repeatedly say things like, "I'm exhausted," or "I'm getting older," or "my body doesn't work like it used to," you're not just expressing temporary feelings. You're literally programming the water that composes your physical structure with instructions for fatigue, aging, and dysfunction. Your cells receive these instructions and begin organizing themselves to match the patterns you're verbally establishing. But when you consciously choose to speak life, health, vitality, and strength into your being, you're programming that same cellular water with instructions for renewal, energy, and optimal function. Your body doesn't distinguish between realistic assessments and positive affirmations. It simply responds to whatever emotional programming you consistently deliver through your words. This is why the ancient wisdom traditions always emphasized the power of spoken word, and why every effective healing system includes some form of verbal or mental direction. They understood something that modern science is just beginning to rediscover, that consciousness and matter aren't separate phenomena, but different expressions of the same fundamental creative force. The journey we're taking together reveals that transformation isn't just about changing your thoughts or improving your circumstances. It's about awakening to your role as a conscious participant in the ongoing creation of your own physical reality through the power of informed intention expressed through word and emotion. Now, I want to explore what happens when you begin applying this understanding to specific areas of your life where transformation seems most challenging. Write in the comments, "My words transform matter," if you're beginning to grasp the profound connection between your verbal expressions and your physical reality. When you begin applying this understanding to specific areas where transformation seems most challenging, you discover that the most persistent problems in people's lives aren't actually caused by external circumstances, genetics, or bad luck. They're caused by what can only be described as unconscious verbal programming that has been running in the background for years or even decades without being recognized or questioned. Let me share a powerful example that demonstrates how quickly this recognition can lead to dramatic healing. There was a patient suffering from chronic thermal skin conditions that had persisted for years despite various medical treatments and lifestyle changes. What became apparent through careful observation was that she had been unconsciously reinforcing her condition through repetitive self-talk that carried intense emotional charge. Multiple times each day, she would say things like, "This never goes away, I'm always sick, and nothing works on me." She thought she was simply describing her medical reality, but she was actually invoking what can only be described as a self-imposed curse through verbal programming. Each emotionally charged repetition of these limiting statements was being received by her subconscious as a direct instruction to maintain and even intensify her symptoms. The transformation began when she learned to consciously replace these destructive phrases with healing-oriented language. Instead of programming illness, she began affirming statements like, "My skin responds with perfect health," "Every cell in my body knows how to heal," and "I am whole, healthy, and completely restored." The results were remarkable. Within 20 days of consistent verbal reprogramming, her condition showed evident improvement that surprised even her medical team. This example reveals something profound about what creates persistent challenges in human experience. When someone finds themselves trapped in repetitive problems, whether those problems are physical, financial, relational, or professional, it's not chance or cosmic bad luck ruling their life. It's an idea, often a very specific idea that was planted years ago and has been unconsciously maintained through verbal reinforcement ever since. The most insidious aspect of this programming is that it often originates not from our own conscious choices, but from phrases we absorb during childhood through other people's words or from unconscious acceptance of foreign beliefs that never actually belonged to us. These invisible chains of limitation are passed down through families, communities, and cultures without anyone recognizing the transfer is happening. Think about the phrases you heard repeatedly during your formative years. Maybe it was, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "Good things don't last," or "People like us don't get those kinds of opportunities." These weren't just casual comments. They were belief systems being installed into your developing subconscious mind by people who had received the same programming from their own childhood experiences. The tragedy is that most people carry these inherited limitations their entire lives without ever questioning whether these beliefs are actually true or whether they serve their highest good. They unconsciously accept foreign programming as their own truth and then spend decades wondering why certain areas of their life never seem to improve despite their conscious efforts and sincere desires for change. But here's what's remarkable about this discovery. The same mechanism that creates these invisible chains can be consciously redirected to break them. When you identify the specific phrases, beliefs, and ideas that have been limiting your experience, you can begin the process of conscious reprogramming through intentional verbal redirection. You're not fighting against mysterious forces or trying to overcome genetic destiny. You're simply updating outdated software that's been running in your mental operating system. The key insight is recognizing that these limiting ideas maintain their power only through unconscious repetition and emotional reinforcement. The moment you become conscious of the programming and begin deliberately replacing it with empowering alternatives, the chains begin to dissolve naturally. Now, I want to explore the most liberating aspect of this entire revelation because there's a specific technique that allows you to identify and systematically replace any limiting programming that's been operating in your subconscious. Write in the comments, "I see my invisible chains," if you're beginning to recognize how unconscious programming from your past might be influencing your present experience. This technique that allows you to identify and systematically replace limiting programming becomes crystal clear when you examine how inherited beliefs operate in the most intimate areas of human experience. Take, for example, a woman who spent years unconsciously sabotaging every potentially healthy relationship that came into her life. Despite consciously wanting love and partnership, she found herself repeatedly choosing unavailable partners, creating unnecessary conflicts, or withdrawing just as relationships were developing depth and intimacy. The pattern seemed mysterious and self-defeating until she discovered the hidden programming that had been running her romantic life since childhood. Growing up, she had repeatedly heard her mother say, "Love always hurts," during times of emotional pain and relationship struggles. As a young child, she absorbed this phrase not as one person's temporary perspective, but as fundamental truth about the nature of love itself. Her subconscious mind accepted this inherited programming as law, and then faithfully worked to ensure that her experience of love matched this expectation. Every time she encountered the possibility of nourishing, peaceful love, her unconscious programming interpreted it as not real love, because it didn't include the element of pain that she had been taught to associate with authentic, romantic connection. The transformation began only when she recognized that love always hurts wasn't universal truth. It was an inherited lie that had been passed down through generations of family patterns. The moment she understood this distinction, she could begin consciously replacing that destructive programming with life-affirming alternatives. She started affirming, "Real love nourishes," and "I deserve peaceful, joyful partnership," and her entire romantic life began shifting to match this new internal blueprint. This same pattern of inherited limitation operates powerfully in the area of financial experience. Poverty, in most cases, isn't actually a lack of resources or limited opportunities. It's fidelity to wrong ideas that have been unconsciously accepted as truth. Phrases like, "Rich people are bad," "Money is the root of all evil," "I wasn't born to have nice things," or "People like us don't get ahead," become invisible governors that prevent individuals from recognizing, pursuing, or maintaining financial abundance. These phrases don't describe reality, they generate it. When your subconscious is programmed with the belief that wealth is somehow morally wrong or that you're not the type of person who deserves financial success, it actively works to sabotage opportunities, block creative thinking, and maintain conditions of limitation that feel familiar and right, according to your inherited programming. The impact of these invisible belief systems extends far beyond individual experience. Entire families, communities, and cultures can remain trapped in cycles of limitation for generations simply because limiting ideas are being passed down as wisdom rather than being recognized as programming that can be consciously updated. What makes this discovery so liberating is realizing that you don't have to remain loyal to beliefs that don't serve your highest good. Even if those beliefs came from people you love and respect, you can honor your family and cultural background while still choosing to update any programming that limits your potential for health, abundance, love, and creative expression. The journey of conscious reprogramming requires developing what can only be described as mental sovereignty, the ability to examine inherited beliefs, evaluate their usefulness, and consciously choose which ideas deserve space in your subconscious mind. This isn't about rejecting your past or disrespecting your upbringing. It's about taking mature responsibility for the quality of programming that's currently operating in your consciousness. When you begin this process of conscious belief evaluation, you discover that many of the limitations you've been accepting as personal truth are actually foreign ideas that were never yours to begin with. They're mental artifacts from other people's experiences, fears, and restricted perspectives that somehow got installed in your subconscious during moments of emotional vulnerability or unconscious absorption. Now I want to reveal the most practical approach to systematically identifying and transforming these inherited limitations, because there's a specific method that makes this entire process surprisingly straightforward and immediately effective. Write in the comments, "I choose my own beliefs," if you're ready to take conscious responsibility for the quality of programming operating in your subconscious mind. This specific method that makes conscious reprogramming surprisingly straightforward centers around understanding the most intimate connection in your entire existence, the relationship between your consciousness and your physical body. Your body isn't a collection of separate mechanical pieces operating independently from your mind. Every single cell is directly connected to your subconscious intelligence, and every organ responds to your thoughts with the same sensitivity that strings respond to the fingers of a skilled musician. When you truly grasp this connection, you realize that mental authority can literally restore your body through conscious direction rather than hoping for external interventions. This isn't alternative medicine or wishful thinking. It's recognizing that your subconscious mind is already controlling every biological process in your body, from your heartbeat to your immune responses, and learning to consciously participate in that direction rather than leaving it entirely to unconscious programming. Let me share a remarkable example that demonstrates just how quickly this conscious direction can produce tangible physical results. There was a woman whose arthritis had progressed to the point where she couldn't open a simple milk bottle without experiencing significant pain. Her hands had become so stiff and uncomfortable that basic daily activities were becoming increasingly difficult, and conventional treatments weren't providing the relief she needed. Instead of accepting this condition as permanent, she decided to experiment with speaking directly to her hands, as if they were intelligent participants in her healing process. 3 times each day, she would place her attention on her hands and speak to them with genuine love and authority, saying, "Blessed hands, flexible and young, obeying God's law." She didn't just recite these words mechanically. She spoke them with the same tenderness and conviction she would use when encouraging a beloved child. The transformation was remarkable. Within 20 days of this consistent practice, her arthritis pain completely disappeared. Her flexibility returned, her strength increased, and she regained full use of her hands without any additional medical intervention. What had happened wasn't a supernatural miracle. It was the natural result of giving her subconscious mind clear, loving instructions about how her hands should function, rather than unconsciously programming limitation through complaints about pain and stiffness. This example reveals something profound about the hidden potential that exists within every human body. Your organs, tissues, and cells are constantly receiving instructions from your subconscious mind, and these instructions are heavily influenced by your conscious thoughts, words, and mental images. When you learn to consciously direct this communication, you gain access to your body's incredible capacity for self-healing and regeneration. Think about the implications of this. Revelation. Every time you say, "My back is killing me," or "I'm falling apart," or "This body is getting old," you're literally programming your physical systems with instructions for dysfunction and decline. But when you begin speaking to your body with respect, appreciation, and positive direction, you start activating healing responses that were always available but weren't being consciously accessed. The journey we're exploring together reveals that your body is not your enemy or even a neutral machine. It's your most loyal partner in the experience of physical life. It responds to your mental direction with incredible faithfulness, whether that direction is conscious and constructive or unconscious and destructive. The choice of which type of programming to deliver is entirely yours. This understanding transforms how you approach any physical challenge or health concern. Instead of seeing your body as something that's betraying you or breaking down against your will, you Begin recognizing it as an intelligent system that's simply following whatever instructions it's been receiving through your thoughts, emotions, and verbal programming. The most liberating aspect of this discovery is realizing that the same mental authority that can restore physical function can be applied to any area of your life where transformation is needed. Now, I want to explore the ultimate application of everything we've discovered, because there's a state of consciousness that represents the culmination of all conscious programming work. Write in the comments, "My body listens to me," if you're ready to begin speaking to your physical being with the love and authority it deserves. This state of consciousness that represents the culmination of all conscious programming work transforms your entire understanding of prayer, manifestation, and the relationship between your inner world and external circumstances. When you truly grasp that your body responds to mental authority with such precision and faithfulness, you begin to understand that the same principle operates in every area of your existence, leading to what can only be described as directed prayer rather than traditional supplication. True prayer, in its most powerful form, isn't about kneeling in desperation or pleading for uncertain favors from a distant deity. It's about ordering, instructing, and speaking with absolute conviction to the creative intelligence that exists within your own consciousness. This represents a fundamental shift from prayer as waiting to prayer as activation. Instead of begging for external intervention, you're consciously directing the same force that's already operating every biological process in your body to extend its influence into your circumstances, relationships, and opportunities. Think about how radical this understanding really is. The same intelligence that coordinates the billions of cellular activities keeping you alive right now, the same power that heals your cuts without your conscious involvement, the same force that maintains your heartbeat while you sleep. This isn't separate from the creative power that shapes your external reality. They're the same intelligence operating at different levels of manifestation. When you pray from this understanding, you're not hoping that some external force will decide to help you. You're consciously collaborating with the creative power that's already intimately involved in every aspect of your existence. Your prayers become instructions rather than requests, declarations rather than desperate appeals. But there's something even more fundamental happening behind the scenes of this process that determines whether your conscious programming efforts produce lasting transformation or temporary changes that eventually revert to old patterns. Your mind operates primarily as what can only be described as a digestive apparatus, and understanding this completely revolutionizes how you approach mental transformation. Just as your stomach breaks down physical food, extracting nutrients and converting them into blood, tissue, and energy, your subconscious mind breaks down mental food, thoughts, images, words, and emotional experiences, converting them into your actual living conditions, your emotional states, and your tangible realities. This isn't metaphorical comparison. It's describing the actual mechanism through which consciousness becomes experience. Every thought you entertain, every image you visualize, every word you speak, and every emotion you sustain gets processed by your subconscious mind as raw material for constructing your life experience. Just as your physical health depends on the quality of food you consume, your life circumstances depend entirely on the quality of mental nutrition you're feeding your subconscious mind. This revelation explains why some people seem to effortlessly maintain positive life conditions, while others struggle constantly despite their best conscious efforts. The successful ones have developed what can only be called excellent mental nutrition habits. They're careful about what thoughts they entertain, selective about what images they allow into their consciousness, and disciplined about the emotional states they choose to sustain. Most people, however, have terrible mental nutrition habits. They consume mental junk food all day long. Worry, complaint, negative news, pessimistic conversations, fearful projections, and limiting beliefs, then wonder why their life circumstances reflect these poor dietary choices. They're trying to create healthy outcomes while feeding their subconscious mind a steady diet of mental toxins. The journey we've been taking together reveals that transformation isn't just about changing your actions or improving your circumstances. It's about taking complete responsibility for the quality of mental nutrition you're providing to your subconscious mind every single day. When you understand that your thoughts are literally the food from which your reality is constructed, you naturally become more selective about what you allow into your mental ecosystem. Now, I want to explore the most profound realization that emerges when you fully embrace this responsibility, because there's a moment in every person's transformation journey when they discover something that changes everything about how they see themselves and their relationship to the creative power of existence. Write in the comments, "I control my mental diet," if you're ready to take full responsibility for the quality of thoughts and images you're feeding your subconscious mind. This moment in every person's transformation journey reveals something that completely redefines what's possible when you truly embrace responsibility for your mental nutrition. Your subconscious mind doesn't operate according to the logical mathematics you learned in school, where 1 + 1 = 2, and effects are proportional to causes. Instead, it functions according to what can only be described as multiplication mathematics, where a single seed introduced with sufficient conviction and emotional charge can produce not just equivalent results, but a 1,000-fold harvest of transformation. This exponential growth principle explains why certain people experience what seem like miraculous breakthroughs after making seemingly small adjustments to their mental programming. They're not the recipients of special cosmic favor. They've discovered how to work with the multiplication factor that's built into the very fabric of subconscious operation. When your inner mind truly accepts something as real, it doesn't just create a little bit of that reality. It multiplies what it understands as true across every area of your experience. Think about the profound implications of this discovery. A single moment of genuine conviction about your health, your worth, your capabilities, or your destiny can generate waves of transformation that ripple through your entire existence. But this same multiplication principle works in reverse when you accidentally program limitation or fear with sufficient emotional intensity. Your subconscious multiplies whatever it accepts as true, regardless of whether that truth serves your conscious desires. This understanding brings us to what might be the most liberating revelation in all of human consciousness. Complete redefinition of what ancient wisdom traditions called the original sin. The real original sin wasn't about eating forbidden fruit or disobeying external commandments. It was something far more personal and immediate, forgetting your inner authority and abandoning your birthright as a conscious director of your own experience. The moment in human development when we stopped speaking to our bodies with loving dominion, when we gave up consciously directing our organs and our destiny with living words, when we began looking outside ourselves for the power that was always meant to operate through us. This was the true fall from grace. We traded conscious participation in creation for unconscious victimhood to circumstances. This forgotten authority represents the hidden truth behind every spiritual teaching and every effective transformation system. You weren't designed to be a passive recipient of whatever life happens to deliver. You were created as a conscious collaborator, with the same creative intelligence that formed the universe itself. The power that spoke light into existence, that organized matter into galaxies and atoms into living cells, isn't separate from the consciousness that looks out through your eyes and speaks through your voice. The journey we've been exploring together is really about remembering this fundamental truth and learning to exercise your divine inheritance responsibly. When you understand that your words carry creative power, that your thoughts shape your reality, and that your emotions activate the multiplication principle in your subconscious mind, You can no longer approach life as a victim of circumstances beyond your control. This revelation transforms everything about how you see yourself and your relationship to the challenges and opportunities in your life. Instead of hoping for external rescue or waiting for conditions to improve, you begin recognizing that the same force that maintains your heartbeat and heals your injuries is constantly available to reorganize your circumstances according to the instructions you provide through conscious mental programming. The impact of this recognition extends far beyond personal transformation. When you truly embrace your role as a conscious creator rather than an unconscious victim, you naturally begin influencing everyone around you through the quality of consciousness you embody. Your transformed awareness becomes a catalyst for awakening in others who are ready to remember their own forgotten authority. Now, I want to explore the ultimate expression of this awakened consciousness, because there's a way of living that represents the full restoration of your creative power. Write in the comments, "I remember my authority," if you're ready to embrace your role as a conscious collaborator with the creative intelligence of the universe. This way of living that represents the full restoration of your creative power begins with understanding that the Garden of Eden described in ancient texts isn't a geographical location that existed somewhere in the distant past. Eden represents a state of consciousness, a way of being where you recognize your intimate connection to the creative source of all existence and operate from that awareness rather than from the illusion of separation and limitation. When the ancient story describes humanity hiding among the trees after the fall, it's providing a perfect metaphor for what most people do when they forget their divine nature. Instead of standing openly in their creative authority, they take refuge behind excuses, symptoms, medical diagnoses, social structures, and cultural beliefs that deny their internal divinity. They hide behind stories about why transformation isn't possible for them, why their circumstances are different, why the principles that work for others couldn't possibly apply to their situation. This hiding behavior becomes a sophisticated form of self-protection that actually prevents the very transformation people claim to desire. It's easier to remain a victim of circumstances than to accept the awesome responsibility that comes with recognizing your true creative power. Taking refuge in limitation feels safer than stepping into the uncertainty that comes with conscious creation, even though that uncertainty leads to unlimited possibility. But there comes a moment in every awakening journey when hiding is no longer an option, when the old excuses lose their power to convince you, and when you're called to embrace what Joseph Murphy describes as the final mandate of conscious living, to live as if you already know. This isn't about pretending or engaging in wishful thinking. It's about recognizing that everything you need to create the life you desire already exists within your consciousness, waiting to be activated through your conscious participation. The profound secret behind this way of living is understanding that your subconscious mind responds not to pleas, bargaining, or desperate attempts to convince it of your worthiness. It responds to the attitude of already having received what you desire. When you carry yourself with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their prayers have been answered, their healing has begun, their prosperity is assured, and their relationships are being divinely orchestrated, you activate the multiplication principle we discussed earlier. This represents the difference between passive hope and active faith. Passive hope waits for evidence before believing. Active faith acts with gratitude before seeing physical results, understanding that the creative process begins in consciousness and then extends into material manifestation. When you live as if you already know that your good is assured, you align yourself with the same creative confidence that spoke the universe into existence. Think about how this transforms your daily experience. Instead of anxiously checking for signs of progress or desperately trying to force outcomes, you move through your day with the peaceful assurance of someone who understands how creation actually works. You speak with authority because you know your words carry power. You make decisions with clarity because you trust the intelligence operating through you. You treat your body with respect because you recognize it as the temple of your creative consciousness. This isn't arrogance or spiritual bypassing. It's the natural result of remembering who you actually are and operating from that truth rather than from the illusion of powerlessness that dominates most human experience. When you live as if you already know, you're not pretending to be something you're not. You're finally expressing what you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning and limitation. The journey we've taken together reveals that transformation isn't about becoming someone new, but about removing everything that obscures your true nature as a conscious creator. Every principle we've explored, every technique we've discussed, every revelation we've uncovered points toward this ultimate recognition. You already possess everything you need to create the life you desire. This specific daily practice that embodies everything we've discovered is actually simpler than you might expect, but its simplicity shouldn't fool you into underestimating its power. When you wake up tomorrow morning, before your conscious mind has a chance to start rehearsing old patterns or worrying about the day ahead, spend just 5 minutes speaking to your subconscious as if you're instructing the most faithful assistant you'll ever have. Tell it exactly what kind of day you're creating, what kind of health you're experiencing, what kind of opportunities you're attracting. Then, as you move through your day, notice how differently you feel when you're operating from the position of conscious creator rather than unconscious victim. Pay attention to how your words carry more intention, how your decisions feel more aligned, how synchronicities begin appearing in ways that would have seemed coincidental before you understood the principles we've explored together. What we've shared in this conversation represents just the beginning of what's possible when you truly embrace your role as the conscious director of your subconscious mind. If this message has resonated with you, if you felt that spark of recognition that comes when ancient truth meets modern understanding, then you're exactly where you need to be to take this journey deeper. I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel because we're building something special here. A community of people who are ready to move beyond the illusion of powerlessness and step into their creative authority. Every video I create is designed to give you practical tools for conscious transformation, real techniques that work in the real world, not just inspiring ideas that sound good, but don't change anything. If you've stayed with me through this entire exploration, if these insights have touched something deep within you, leave a comment saying, "This message was meant for me," so I know you're part of this awakening community. Your presence here isn't accidental. You were ready to hear these truths, and that readiness drew you to exactly the right message at exactly the right time. And if you've felt that connection we've built through these words, if this conversation has opened new possibilities in your thinking, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps more people discover these principles when they're ready to receive them. There's a video right here that takes everything we've discussed today and shows you how to apply it specifically to financial abundance, the exact techniques for programming prosperity consciousness that most people never learn. Click and continue with me over there, because your transformation journey is just getting started.